Deepseek, a historic event, what we saw unfolding over the last week or so. And it is historic for two reasons. Because it combines two poignant and highly significant stories. One story is that this is our generation's Sputnik moment. When in the 1950s, the Russians totally unexpectedly were the first ones to go to space with Sputnik. The United States, that had managed to convince themselves that we're far ahead of the rest of the world in space technology, were absolutely shattered and shocked, emotionally, psychologically, ideologically, that the Soviet Union, that was struggling to produce enough plows, cow-driven plows, until a few years before, suddenly had gone to space before them. And of course, we saw what happened after that, the escalation of the space race, the arms race, and the Cold War. So this is another Sputnik moment, because up until last week, both American government and big tech, Silicon Valley, did assume that China was eons behind them in developing artificial technology. And Deepseek comes in with a very cheap model, which is just as effective, maybe more efficient than Altman's much hyped ChatGPT. So this is one dimension, the Sputnik mode. But there's another dimension, and we must not fall into the trap of only looking at the first dimension. The first dimension, just like it was between the Soviet Union and the United States in the 1950s, concerns a kind of race towards AI success between the United States and China. The second dimension is very different. We have to remember that as good leftists, we must not forget that, trade wars and these races between large economic blocs are deep down class wars. In other words, they are happening as class wars and as trade wars within those economic blocs. Let me explain a bit more cogently what I mean by that. There are two kinds of corporations in the United States and in China, but let's focus on Silicon Valley now, that use algorithms, that use algorithmic capital, what I call cloud capital in my book, in my recent book that most of you have heard me talk about. There is a cloud capital that is being used in order to produce the algorithms, the platforms of big tech, like Amazon, Airbnb, Uber, Google, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Okay, that all requires algorithmic or cloud capital to be built. And then there are companies like OpenAI that produce, using more or less the same technology, they produce a straightforward capitalist service. So what is the difference between, let's say, this, the Google Assistant, and what DeepSeek did, or what OpenAI do with their DeepSeek, with their GPT, ChatGPT? The difference is that the latter, ChatGPT and DeepSeek, provide you with a commodity. They provide you with a service which is commodified. There's a market for it. There are competing providers, suppliers, and you choose which one you want on the basis of price, of quality, of brand resonance, whatever. It is in that realm that DeepSeek dealt a major blow at American cloud capital, because Sam Altman was banking on huge revenues from selling in that market the services of his AI bot. He was vulnerable to that kind of intrusion by DeepSeek because he was competing at the marketplace. He was selling something. Whenever you sell something, a competitor may appear out of nowhere and sell the same thing cheaply, more cheaply, or both in a better quality and a lower price. But what lives inside the Google Assistant, the Siri interface of Apple phones, um, Amazon's Alexa, and so on, what lives in there is not a supplier to you of some commodity, which, like every other commodity, comes with a price at the marketplace. When you are in Facebook, in Instagram, in TikTok, you're not buying anything. You are a user who's being used. You are posting stuff. You are training the interface, whether it's a Google Assistant or Siri or Amazon's Alexa. You're training it to train you, to give it better information so that it can impress upon you, its capacity to give you good advice on what music to listen to, what books to buy, what electric bicycles to purchase. And then it sells it to you once you have formed that desire for what it has instructed you or guided you to desire. It sells it to you directly outside a market process, because Amazon is not a market, it's a platform. And how does Bezos, the Amazon owner, benefit from that? By charging up to 40% of the price you pay, effectively creaming off, siphoning off whatever surplus value has been produced in the capital sector that has produced this item. Now, that sector, what I call the techno-feudal sector, is not threatened by someone like Deepseek, because it's not a market. It's not a capitalist market. It's what I call techno-feudalism. It's outside the realm of capitalism, of the capitalist marketplace as we understand it. So, to wrap up, Deepseek created the Sputnik moment, but it also created a major clash of prospects within the cloud capital sector in the United States, but also in China. Essentially, companies like OpenAI were severely damaged. Their profitability, long-term profitability, their net present value collapsed. But companies like Amazon, if anything, were strengthened, because these technologies, which allow us through Deepseek or ChatGPT to ask them to draw pictures for us or to write essays for us, whatever, these same reinforcement learning algorithms that Deepseek uses, once fused with the cloud capital of Alibaba, the Chinese version of Amazon, or Amazon, that enhances the power of cloud capital to modify our behavior, and therefore to afford its owners, the owners of Amazon, for instance, or Alibaba, a greater capacity to extract rents from the rest of the economy.